Welcome to the Wolverine Digest podcast, the best spot for objective and authentic coverage of Michigan athletics. If you want open dialogue, honest opinions, and in-depth coverage of the maize and blue, this is the podcast for you. And now, here's your host, Brandon Brown, joined as always by Chris Breiler.
I was going to start by saying go blue.
Well, good evening, everybody, on a Wednesday. Sorry for the slightly late start. As always, it's like clockwork. Chris and I jump on here, we're early, and then we start talking about what we should be doing for the show, and then one of us will just be like, let's just start. That's the show. My dad texted me 7:09. Where are you guys? Where are you at?
Listen, if there's one thing we are consistent about, extremely consistent about, it's showing up at least 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6, sometimes 7, 8, 9, 10 minutes late.
It's funny though.
Good things are worth waiting for.
It's funny though, because like 98% of the time we're early, and then we just start we talk about what the show is going to be, and we kind of get off on these little tangents, and then we're like, damn, we should have just hit the live button and just went right there. So anyway, glad to have everybody on a Wednesday night. It is fan-led Wednesday, so if you've got them, start launching them off right now. And part of what made Chris and I late was we were kind of going back and forth a little bit on what we wanted to talk about until some questions start rolling in. Obviously, Michigan and 3 other teams right now are in a slightly different position than just about the rest of the country. And that's why you're seeing some different things with what's going on right now. We were focusing on the transfer portal. That's the main thing we were kind of talking about. Obviously, there you go. Adam's paying attention. Lots of players from Ohio State and other schools, sure, but everybody's paying attention to the ones at Ohio State jumping in the transfer portal. And
this is a good thing for that team, Brandon. This is exactly where you want to be if you're Ohio State. You're weeding out the weak players and making room for the elite guys. Like, this is all part of the plan down there.
Man, I just, we're going back and forth a little bit. I'm like, can you imagine if this was happening at Michigan, what Ohio State people would be saying, what the talking heads would be saying, especially if it was like after the season they just had and maybe they don't beat Ohio State and make the playoff.
Michigan just lost their 3rd straight to Ohio State. J.J. McCarthy's in the portal. One of your, Donovan Edwards in the portal. A couple top defenders in the portal. They've got 14 or 15 guys in the portal. Like, for anybody in Columbus to try to frame what's happening right now as a positive for the football program, I just think we talked about it before we hopped on. It's like, it's another type of coping mechanism. I think this is not an ideal place to be. No matter how you try to spin it, it's not an ideal place to be for Ryan Day, not an ideal place to be for any of the players, certainly not an ideal place if you're a Buckeye fan. And I mentioned this to you before we hopped on. It's not like, you're talking about a team that, I don't know, won 5 games, barely qualified for a bowl. Like, this is an 11-1 football team. They lost to Michigan by, 6 points. Very, very close to, having an opportunity to play in the playoff, and, you're losing guys left and right. So I do think it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. But, this idea that I've seen floated out there multiple times that, this is a good thing, that what's happening in Columbus is exactly what you want to see at this point is that's been an interesting spin for sure.
Also, there's no way in hell Marvin Harrison Jr. comes back to school, right? Like,
no.
Dude, there's a lot of fans out there from Ohio State that think it's possible.
Okay, I was going to say normal fans or Ohio State fans?
No, that's what I'm saying. Ohio State fans, we got a donation here. I'm assuming you mean Marvin Harrison Jr. He doesn't have a top 5. He doesn't have a top list of school. He's either going pro or he's coming back. But he's going pro. He's like a top 3 pick. What would be the point of returning?
No.
I appreciate that. I appreciate the donation. The first question, very valid. Did Michigan break Ohio State? In some ways. Like, they are reeling. They are reeling after losing 3 in a row to Michigan. There's no doubt about it. Michigan is all over the place on that campus. Like, they're in their head. There's no doubt about it. 3 years in a row, similar type of approach, similar formula, and it's working every time. And this year was obviously like the craziest one because Jim Harbaugh wasn't even there to coach them through it. And then obviously last year in Columbus to win that way. And then in 2021 was kind of like the breakthrough, and it was pretty emphatic as well. So all three of them very unique and very special for different reasons. And yeah, I think Ohio State is a little bit broken. Like they're going to continue, like Chris just said, they're going to continue to beat everybody else. That's fine. That's about that one game in November. And right now they do not have an answer.
Look, and we were there for, 5 or 6 years on the other side of it. And it wasn't like Michigan was having, 2020 obviously wasn't a great season, but there were a lot of circumstances Michigan couldn't control that year. Harbaugh had an 8-win season here and there, but by and large, it was 10-2 every single year, and then a loss in the bowl game, which, we might address that a little bit later in the show. But overall, it was Jim Harbaugh was putting together solid seasons at the University of Michigan. But if you don't win that final game, now here's where things change moving forward. For so long, winning or losing that final game meant whether or not you're playing for a conference championship and whether or not you're going to be in the college football playoff. We saw Ohio State get a little bit lucky with that last year, being able to back their way in after a dominant loss, which now the more I think about it, like the fact that Florida State was kept out, and then I look back at how Ohio State got in last year, losing by 20 plus points in their own building, and there was still justification to put them in. Just a strange situation, but it was for such a long time. That game at the end of the year meant so much. There were so many implications as far as whether or not you won or lost. And now moving forward, I think it's sad. And listen, I'm not a huge fan of Reese Davis lately. And, a lot of it has to do with, the ESPN coverage of the Michigan sign stealing thing. But he said something, I think it's on his podcast, or maybe he was on somebody's podcast. He said it recently. In some ways, I'm excited about expansion of the playoff because I think it's going to make for a really interesting product. But one of the things that made college football so special was that every single even if it was non-conference, every Saturday mattered. It was like you go no college football and then you kick off and it's the playoffs. You lose once and you're pretty much done. And that's going to go away in, to a large extent next year. I mean, you're going to see one-loss teams. You're going to see maybe a two-loss team from the Big Ten or an SEC conference be able to get in. So I guess it's a long way of saying that if you're somebody down in Columbus, if you're an Ohio State fan, trying to spin what's happening with the football program right now in any other way other than this is not great, I think you're doing whatever you can to cope with the way the last few years have turned out.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And to your point, Chris, if the 12-team playoff was this year, you'd actually have 5 2-loss teams in, and really could make an argument for a couple 3-loss teams to get in. Like, LSU's sitting there at 9-3. Notre Dame's 9-3. They don't have a conference championship game. Iowa. I mean, we all have our opinion of Iowa, but they were one bad call away from. So the point is, you're right. Like, losing a game used to be like, damn, that's it. There it is. Like, that's probably it. And that's not going to be the case anymore.
That's
also kind of cool, though.
I was going to say, how do you feel about that?
Not really, because then you're still going to have a chance to prove that, like, okay, maybe that was a bad day. Maybe your quarterback rolled an ankle in the second half. Like, your whole season shouldn't necessarily hinge on something like that. Week 4, not playing. I mean, Alabama's like a prime example this year. They were benching quarterbacks and trying 3 different guys and
tied 3-3 with UCF at the half. Obviously, I think they won 17-3 at the end of the day, but 3-3 with UCF at halftime, and now you're in the top 4 in the playoff. That's a pretty incredible turnaround.
I mean, like, the lane train. You put Mississippi in at 10-2 and let them start running around and doing what they do. Who the hell knows? Like I said, LSU sitting there with 3 losses. They have, they probably have the Heisman winner on their team. Get them in the playoff and let them start doing some damage and see what it
looks like. Get Liberty in there?
I think, Liberty's down at number 23 at 13-0.
Where's Tulane? Who is it? Is it Tulane that's been rising up in the rankings?
Not this year. They did last year. SMU is up there at 24. Yeah, Tulane was like 20th or 18th or something last year, I think. But yeah, Liberty and SMU are kind of like the group of 5 darlings this year. But yeah, and you just never know. You get in, you got a shot. Big players start making big plays, and you could have some some parity and some chaos. It's ultimately still you're going to get down to 4 at some point. And you're going to be like, well, there's what the playoff probably would have looked like anyway. That's what it's going to do most of the time. But
I think that's
chance though.
It's not going to be like March Madness, right? Because football is just a different game. It's a different sport.
Hard,
and when you've got guys, 11 guys across the board that are just flat out better than those that they're like. I guess that's one of the cool things about March Madness and having that many teams in the tournament is that you can get that Cinderella team. Anything can happen. If you put, Michigan, Bama, Georgia, Ohio State, you put these teams in a 12-team playoff, even if you put, an SMU in there, something like that, like the idea that a team like that's going to make it all the way. And you saw it to a certain extent with TCU last year. Obviously, they were able to handle their business against Michigan, played a hell of a game, but got to the national championship, and it was very, very clear that they were completely overmatched.
It's going to be rare. I mean, it will. It's not going to happen as much as it does in basketball. There's no doubt. But I mean, you think back, 10, 15, maybe 20 years ago. Geez, how long ago it was when like Boise made a run and beat Oklahoma in a big bowl. Like they didn't have any business winning that game, but they did. It's going to happen sometimes, but I'm with you. I think a lot of it's going to be the usual suspects. It's going to be your Georgias, Bamas, Ohio State, Clemson, maybe if they can get back up there.
And then thinking about the Big Ten conference, like just getting to the Big Ten championship game. I mean, you got to go through Oregon, you got to go through Washington, you got to go through USC, you got to go through Ohio State, you got to go through Penn State. Like you talk about a loaded conference, like just making it through the Big Ten next year seems like a daunting task. And then you take away the divisions, and now you go and you win the Big Ten championship next year. Man, that's going to be an impressive run. So a lot of big changes coming, a lot to be excited about. But I also think I don't know, for those of us that are old heads, maybe some boomers out there, you just feel like conflicted a little bit that things are changing the way they are. And I think, I was talking to somebody about this at the Big Ten championship game before Michigan and Iowa kicked off. We were talking about, making plans possibly for California and then, how next year might look. And this idea that Michigan, Ohio State could play November 25th or whatever the final week of the year is, and then meet each other in the Big Ten championship game, and then have a possibility of meeting back up in the playoff. Like all of a sudden, that last game of the year, yes, it carries significance, but not nearly as much as it has up to this point. And I think to see that go away is a little bit sad.
And it's awesome that Michigan won the biggest one. This last one was the biggest one for a lot of those reasons you just mentioned, because it's all going away. It's never going to feel like that again. Undefeated, 2-3. The other narratives, no heart. I mean, for so many reasons, that one was as big as they get, and Michigan, was able to pull it out. So pretty cool. We got a couple other super chats. Want to give people their love here. Our favorite non-Italian, Benezioni, which apparently isn't Italian, which blows my mind. And there's a few typos here, but I think I can decipher it for you, Ben. Trying not to look too far ahead, but playing. That's an interesting typo there. But playing Texas and Houston for the Natty would be, that wouldn't be. That'd be a pretty big deal for Texas to have home field advantage basically for the national title game. But Texas does care about their football a little bit. So that's an interesting thought. If they do win, if they are able to beat Washington, whether it's Michigan or Alabama, that's a big deal for them.
I tell you what, in an ideal world, that would be my preference. Michigan goes out, beats Bama in the Rose Bowl, and then you go to, because you're going to have detractors, you're going to have people dismissing Alabama. It should have been Florida State. It shouldn't have been Bama. Turns out they weren't that good.
Yeah.
And then you know what? And then Michigan goes down to Texas, the state of Texas, plays Texas basically on their home field and wins a national championship there. It would be indisputable.
I mean,
that to me is like, that's the storybook. And now, is it the easiest pathway? No, I don't think so. But, at this point, you already have to play Alabama. So you're looking at either Washington or Texas. Take your pick between the two.
That's closing out the year with winning 3 of your last 4 games against powerhouse blue blood programs.
Love it.
There's no more anything. I mean, I don't know how long it's going to last. I don't know if it's ever going to go away. I mean, you look at the Astros, they still bring up stuff about them whenever they have any success. The Patriots to some degree, even though Brady's not there anymore. So that feels to have fizzled out a little bit. But, dude, I don't know about you, Chris. I know I'm on Twitter. I don't think it probably happens on the Facebook page as much. I can't even post anything now without 50 people just talking about, well, who cares? You cheated. You're cheated. Like, it's nonstop. I wonder if what you just said happens, if that would have to put some of the fire out a little bit, wouldn't it? You beat Alabama, or you still think it won't matter?
I mean, you are never going to change the mind or the conduct of an idiot on Twitter. Like, they are just going to be the way that they are. But I think to reasonable folks, to people who aren't that way, sure, you can talk shit and you can be a college football fan and you can scream cheaters all you want, but deep down, you'll know what Michigan did was incredible. What they did was special. And
even to this point already, honestly, I'm like, have you guys been paying attention? Like, what do you mean?
Correct. Yeah, but again, you beat Bama in the Rose Bowl, you go down, you win a national championship, potentially against Texas in their home state. I just think, Desmond Howard shared his thoughts recently on Paul Feinbaum, a few weeks ago, said something to the effect of, he would be disgusted if Michigan won it all, and he wouldn't even view them as a national champion. And I just think even guys like that, they might say that publicly, but they know deep down, if Michigan takes care of business and they win these next two games and they end up raising the trophy at the end of the year, yeah, you're going to have a lot of people screaming, cheaters, cheaters, cheaters. But I think everybody's going to know the real deal deep down.
I mean, it's like, it probably went on. And I mean, there's not, I don't know. It was a different time, and it's, West Coast football kind of has a different vibe anyway. But like, no one says Reggie Bush wasn't the Heisman winner that year. Dude, freaking won the Heisman. No one cares. Some of the successes that other teams have had where it hasn't been maybe on the up and up again, like the Astros. They got caught, but they still won that. And like, yeah, you're not going to take that away.
Listen,
you're just
I don't think any less of Mark McGwire for hitting like 170 home runs, whatever year that was. At 98. I do.
It's a while ago now.
I don't watch baseball ever. But I remember being of a certain age whenever that was going on. Mark McGwire, Barry Bonds, Sammy Sosa in the mix, like those guys that were roided out, like clearly, blatantly cheating. Now, I'm not saying that's what Michigan was doing, but these guys that were juiced out and knocking the ball out of the park. Like, I was watching like I was glued to my television set when Mark McGwire was up to bat, and I remember like everybody was going crazy about it. So. Yeah,
McGwire holding a bat, it looks like this in his hand. He's just enormous.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the shitty part about it is no matter what, it's always going to be part of the story. I think as time goes on and as the years go on, it's going to become a smaller and smaller part of the story. But given how big it was, and sort of just how incredible and complex and odd it was. Oftentimes, for anybody who followed the story, I just can't ever envision a time where it completely goes away.
Yeah, you're probably right. And and I think this is part of it too. I don't think anybody would question this. The level of vitriol and the rabid fan bases exists way more in college football than it does in pro baseball.
No doubt.
And I mean, just across the board. Yeah, you got your Yankees, Red Sox hatred maybe, but like, who hates the Astros? Nobody. I mean, it's just not the same. It's not the same feel. AJ Cooper, this is an interesting question. Do we finally see an improvement in recruiting this year, or do we wait and see how the playoff goes? It's one of those things where I feel like Michigan has kind of settled in where they settle in with recruiting. Like, they're really, really good, but I just don't know if they go about it the way, whether it be NIL or the negative recruiting, that I don't think they really do. I mean, the coaches say they don't. I used to cover recruiting exclusively, and I never heard the players talk about, well, Michigan, was bagging on Penn State or bagging on, but we would hear from other recruits that like Ohio State had a whole presentation about like blasting Michigan. So, whether it's, like I said, whether it's NIL stuff now or approach, or just the way that I just don't know if they're willing to do some of the things. that would get them up into that top 1, 2, and 3 classes. I just don't know if that's part of their fabric. And to be honest, I don't know if it matters, because they've seemed to figure something out with a balance of the transfer portal, bringing in the right kinds of kids, development, and I mean we're 3 years in a row in the playoff. Like, does it really matter that their recruiting class was 9th or 12th or whatever it was? I mean, you don't want to see it fall off into the 30s and 40s, but if you're staying in the top 10, 12, 15, I think that's acceptable. And Michigan does start from a pool smaller than some other schools. It's a fact. Yeah. It's a fact. They just don't go after some of these different kids, and certainly geography plays a part in that. There's a lot of moving parts, but to answer your question, I don't really know if it's going to change a whole lot, but I don't know if it matters all that much.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's going to change a lot. I think last I looked on 247, Michigan's 2024 class is ranked like 15th or something like that. They got some solid players in the class. There's no doubt about it. Looks like they made a lot of ground with some top prospects out there. Gatlin Bear out in Idaho, the speedster I think he's going to go on a mission for like a year, or is it 2 years?
2 years, I believe. Yeah.
But in any event, I think Michigan is going to do all right on the recruiting trail like they've done. But to Brandon's point, I just don't think, unless something drastic changes, I don't think Michigan is ever going to do what some of these other schools are willing to do from an NIL standpoint to get a guy like maybe Justin Scott on campus. I mean, there was no, I was going to say, like, there was no reading between his recruiting picture, his commitment to Miami, there was a giant bag of cash sitting next to him on a beach. Like, that was
where we're at now.
Right. So
they're openly saying, like, I need $5,000 just to come on a visit.
Correct. I mean, I'm not going to speculate, but I know that at one point in time, Dante Moore, it just was a no-brainer to go to Michigan. Mm-hmm. And he ended up committed to Oregon, and then ended up at UCLA for whatever reason, right? Just decided, I guess, it was a better fit, maybe. But Michigan is not going to be offering top players bags of cash to come play for the Wolverines. Like, that's not the way it's going to happen. So you're going to see programs like Miami, Texas A&M, those types of programs. You're going to see them land these big time 5-star recruits because some of these kids just want a bag of cash when they get on campus. But you're also going to see a lot of these guys in the portal a year or two after that, like we're seeing right now. And I think that's where Michigan really excels. So will the recruiting improve? Maybe not, but you're going to see guys after they get to college, they've been made all these promises, all these NIL dollars are coming. You spend 1 or 2 years in an environment like that, you're not really winning, and you're like, shit, this is not what I signed up for, not where I want to be. And that's where Michigan can swoop in. And I think, Brandon, you've said this before, but getting a 4 or 5-star guy who's got experience and proven at the collegiate level out of the transfer portal is as good as getting like a 6-star guy on the recruiting trail, because now they're coming in with experience. Now they know how to win at this level. And Michigan and Jim Harbaugh and the coaching staff really seem to be good at, I mean, take a look at Drake Nugent, Oluwatimi, like these guys that they're AJ Barner, you can go down the list. They are finding gems in the transfer portal, and I think that's where you're going to see Michigan excel as the years go on.
I mean, that's a great point. Imagine there's a dude coming out of high school. He's 6'6", 265, and looks like AJ Barner as a tight end. Like, what's that guy rated? It may be off the charts, and so that's what you
tight end ever.
Correct. I mean, he would be the absolute, number one at his position kind of guy. And so that's what it is like adding a player from the portal. I mean, you don't get to keep him as long, and there's some, a little bit more roster management that has to take place. But in terms of immediate impact and what it can mean for your roster right now, it's huge. And I don't know how it's
for perspective. 1,300 players hit the portal. The morning that it officially opened.
Yeah,
so
crazy.
There is no, and that's going to be the case unless something dramatic changes. Like fundamentally, Michigan's going to have that option every single year. You're going to have a whole host of guys with experience who've done X, Y, and Z at other programs that are in there and looking for the type of opportunity that Michigan provides.
And Michigan has been so good at it and got the right kind of just imagine, all right, I don't even think position matters. Say they're going out, Michigan's offered This defensive tackle, I think, was it from Penn, another like Ivy League kind of guy. They've offered a DB from Western Kentucky. They offered the big dude, the receiver from Indiana recently. There's quarterbacks that are like, so Michigan's already doing the shopping. Imagine putting any one of those dudes on the phone with Oluwatimi and say, just tell him what your experience was like. Same thing with Drake Nugent. Talk to him for 20 minutes and let him know. It doesn't even matter the position. Those are smart dudes. They shopped and went around and found guys that they absolutely wanted, that they knew would be a fit, that they knew would play, and they knew would help them win at a high level. And that's the best sales pitch of anything when you're going into the transfer portal. And I was going to say specifically, I don't know how it's going to play out with Walter Nolan, but he was a monster target for Michigan. And Michigan fans like, God, we got to get him. We got to get him. And then the NIL stuff started, and they're like, fuck, he's going to go somewhere else. And sure enough, he did. But to your point, now look, 2 years later, Michigan's going to have a chance to get that kid back. Miles Hinton, I don't think he was an NIL type of thing, but same deal. These guys are big-time targets for Michigan the first time around. They don't want to play ball the way Michigan wants to play ball. That's cool. We'll catch you in a year or two when your experience blows at that other place. That's what's going to happen. Yeah. And Jim Harbaugh has been lights out when it comes to grabbing transfers. And this past year was, dude, like there's like 7 or 8 of them, and they are all essential to what Michigan is doing on the field this year. You got Josh Wallace, you got Hausman,
put on the list,
Nate Nugent, you got Barner, even Tuttle back. That's a valuable asset as a backup quarterback. He knew the drill. Ladarius Henderson, Miles Hinton, I mentioned, started the first half of the year, then got banged up a little bit. I mean, it is across the board with the kind of guys that they brought in. And again, you can put any one of those dudes on the phone with guys considering Michigan or when they come in for their visit or whatever, and it's the best sales pitch there is.
Imagine if Jim Harbaugh went on the recruiting trail and brought in 6 guys in the 2024 recruiting class that were instant starters and major contributors. That's essentially what he did in the transfer portal. And so again, long-winded answer to AJ Cooper's question, but no, I don't think Michigan is going to improve necessarily on the recruiting trail. They might here and there, but not. You're not going to see a massive leap to where I think they're signing the number 1 or number 2 class overall, because they're just not willing to do some of the things that the other programs are doing from an NIL standpoint. But I think if we've learned anything over the last 3 years, it's that you don't have to. Let these guys go out and experience what that setting is like at a different program. And then they hop in the portal. They've got all this experience. Now they got a better head on their shoulders, a better understanding of what a good opportunity at this level means. And you get those guys on your campus and in your program. And now they've bought in because they've got a little bit of experience. They've seen it before and they appreciate what's at Michigan.
And who knows, maybe they go to their first school and they made $250,000. And then they can talk to Blake Corum and JJ McCarthy and say, though, yeah, but if you do well here, you're going to make more than that. So why don't you come on over and check it out? And that's how it's going to work out for some of these guys. I don't know how many. I think I just named like 6 or 7. So I don't know how many guys year to year you're going to get from the portal that become contributors and play a lot and start to make an impact. But let's say it's 6 or 8. I mean, that's more true freshmen than usually make an impact from a 25-man class. You could make an argument that playing the transfer portal correctly is now more important than recruiting. I don't think that's like a far leap because, dude, I mean, half the guys you get in your recruiting class, if it doesn't work out, they're transferring out anyway. So it's totally changed the way that college football rosters are assembled, and Jim Harbaugh has done it as well as anybody. I think it's a huge reason why they've been in the playoff. I mean, we just talked about it. They haven't really recruited at an elite level, I wouldn't say. Really good and got some good players, but not the number 1 class, not number 3, not 5, not 7 even. I mean, they're hovering around 10 or 15.
Yeah, but I think it's also worth noting, we're talking about recruiting at an elite level. Would you consider Mike Sainristil an elite recruit who was a 3-star guy?
He wasn't. I mean, by all metrics, he was not.
But it turns out Mike Sainristil is an elite football player. And I do think that there's something to be said. And I wonder this too. And I might ask some of these guys when given the opportunity, but I do wonder if the success over the last 3 years has changed what Michigan views as a good recruit. Like you can go after 5-star kids and you can go after these guys that, want to have massive sort of signing parties, and I'm going to put all the hats on the table and all the theatrics, bring in the smoke machine, do all this bullshit. I'm wondering if, you get a guy like, and Blake Corum wasn't a low-rated recruit, but he also wasn't a 5-star, top of the list type. I mean, hard worker, blue collar type guy. Mike Sainer still hard worker, blue collar type. I think Chris Jenkins was a 3-star. Like, you can go down the list. Mike Barrett. I mean, the all-time winningest Wolverine of he just
Rod Moore. Good Lord.
Rod Moore. Perfect example. Like, you can go down the list, and Michigan is full of those guys. So I wonder if the success they've had against Ohio State, winning the conference championship, making the playoff, has changed the way they view recruiting in terms of what it is they're really looking for and what fits within this program. And whatever it is they've got going on, they've figured it out. I mean, there is a physical and a mental toughness on this team. Yes, Dustin Rebb, there's no question. Coach Ben Herbert absolutely has a ton to do with the way that this team is built physically and their mental makeup. But there's also something to be said for recruiting a guy like a Mike Sainer still, who comes from a 3-star, rating to, I don't know, where would you put Mike Sainer still in terms of two-way players, guys that have played both sides of the ball? I mean, for me, you've got Charles Woodson, who played offense and defense, mostly defender. You got Mike Sainer still, who made big plays offensively early in his career, has made some of the biggest plays defensively. Conference champion game, MVP, only the second player to do that, joining Aiden Hutchinson, who was number 2 overall pick. Like, I think Mike Sainer still cemented himself as one of the greatest ever to play at the University of Michigan.
Yeah. Yeah. By the way, Zach Zinner, 3-star prospect, 17 guards better than him coming out of high school. 17 guards better than him coming out of high school.
Yeah.
Hilarious.
It's fun to go back and look through those recruits.
Is, man. It really is, man. Carson Barnhart was I think he actually bumped up to 4-star, but so that's a small school kid. I mean, it is amazing. It is amazing. Jim Hart. I mean, you could go back to every class, and you could probably do that at a lot of places. I mean, this isn't only happening at Michigan, but they've figured something out. There's no doubt about it. The way that they recruit, the way that they identify talent, the way that they see the long-term development, whether it's body type or position or work ethic or whatever, they figured some stuff out. There's no doubt about it. I don't know if that's your real last name. I doubt it. If it is, amazing. If it's not, still pretty sick. James Humperhard, appreciate it. Yeah, we talked about it without putting your question up there. It does feel like Ohio State is bleeding. They're injured. They're battered. They don't have an answer, and it's glorious. I mean, you don't really need to say much else, but appreciate the donation there. This is an interesting question. I don't know if we want to do the least favorite. I haven't really thought about that before. But Sean Bennett wants to know favorite and least favorite Michigan player of all time. I mean, there's some leasts you could throw out there and you wouldn't get any pushback or heat from it.
Yeah, but that's not kosher. That's not the direction we want.
All you got to do is pick someone who, like, I mean, dude, if you said Cade McNamara, people would hear you. I mean, that's not my answer, but I'm saying people would be fine with that answer.
I mean, there's some guys you could list off, but here, maybe I'm a prisoner of the moment here. So, forgive me for this, but, and Mike Sainer still is right there. I am a huge fan.
He's easy to like.
He's very easy to like. And from everything he's done, the way he's gone about his business, the professionalism he has, how talented he is this guy is the total package. But I got to go Blake Corum. I got to go Blake Corum. And again, I might be a prisoner of the moment here. Go ahead.
Well, your answer used to be pretty easily Denard. Are you saying Blake Corum has?
I think Blake Corum has
Denard Robinson.
I think so. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, he's as consistent as they come. Blue collar, hard worker guy. I mean, talk to his dad and you'll understand why Blake Corum is the way he is.
Another easy guy to like.
He's 1 touchdown away from setting the all-time, career rushing touchdown record. What he's done in his 4 years at the University of Michigan, and then you add on top of that who and what he is in the community and his commitment to giving back and how important that is to him. And he talks about that a lot. I think for me, it's got to be Blake Corum.
We have a new Chris Breiler. I mean, this is a guy that used to want convicts, guys who maybe hit anyone that is in front of them.
It's a 180-degree turn.
Now he wants turkey donating, hardworking.
Yes. I used to want the gold grills, I used to. Now I'm not opposed to it, but I used to want that. Maybe a rap sheet. I used to think that you needed to have an offense that had 5 receivers out and put up 70 points a game.
Yeah.
I've come a long way over the last 3 years, and that is a testament to the way this team has won, the type of players that they've won with. And that's why I go back to the recruiting trail. Like, I wonder if you're Jim Harbaugh and you're a guy on this coaching staff, like you look at recruiting completely differently because you look in your locker room and you're like, that guy was a 3-star. That guy was a 3-star. That guy was like a borderline 4-star. And now they're superstars here at the University of Michigan, doing great in school, giving back to their community. They're captains on this team. I think this group of players has set the bar tremendously high at the University of Michigan for all the classes and transfers that will follow.
There are a ton of very likable dudes on this year's team the last couple of years. All the success certainly helps with that. I mean, it's easy to remember guys making big plays and big games and getting huge wins. That helps. It's still nostalgia for me. It's Charles Woodson. Sure. And then number 2 for me is a little more obscure. It's Tyrone Wheatley. I've always loved the running back position the most in football. Like, it's just the most fun position in my head, like video game wise, or just what they do. I mean, again, hearkening back to my love for Barry Sanders, like running back has always just been like my favorite position. So yeah, for me, it's Woodson and then Tyrone Wheatley. If I was going to go like more modern era, I mean, yeah, dude, the 2 that Chris just named are right up there. I mean, I was a huge Jabril Peppers fan. I know whether or not, there's some Michigan fans who didn't think he quite did what he was supposed to do at Michigan, but he was playing out of position. They had him doing this, they had him doing that. Yeah, I mean, I could go on and on. I mean, you watch Michigan football for 30 years. There's a lot of dudes you like to watch.
I will say, as you brought up Denard Robinson, the highlight reel started playing in my head as I was talking about Blake Corum, and it might be 1A or 1B. I will. Oh,
and Denard would be another one. Yes,
I will die on the mountaintop screaming that Denard. He does not get the appreciation. And I know a lot of people love him. A lot of people appreciate him. What this guy did in the era he did it in, you'll never see it again. And it would have. I mean, can you imagine seeing him on a team like this? What he would be capable of? How dynamic he was at the position? What he was? He could do like. Oh my God. I absolutely love Denard Robinson, but I think the fact that Blake Corum might have taken over that top spot ever so slightly, again, it speaks to what he's done during his career, the way he's gone about his business. It's top notch in every sense of the word.
If you guys are watching the Rose Bowl and you see Blake Corum and Denard break out into a fist fight, you'll know why. They're now battling for Chris Breiler's heart over there. But no, I mean,
I'll run over to break it up and talk some sense into him. We'll reminisce about the days of yesteryear.
And for me too, there's another element because I used to cover recruiting. Like, it was really cool getting to know some of these dudes when they were younger. Like Aiden Hutchinson will always be one of my favorites. He was a local kid. I started covering him when he was in like 10th grade. Got to know his family pretty well. So there's a lot of different layers to it. Again, I don't know if we want to do the least favorite. I mean, I'm going to put up Sean's question because he paid the money. But okay, John O'Corn's a good dude, man. I'm not gonna roast him like that. He tried. Come on, he tried. But
yeah. I mean, there's nothing. There's nothing. There's nothing that like. There's no reason to have any sort of ill will towards John O'Corn. Like, no. He did what he could in the situation he had, and that's what it is.
Those were not. He wasn't in the best position to succeed at times. I mean,
listen, I'll take John O'Corn every day over the week over number 12.
I do remember. Oh, man, I do remember thinking he was going to be really good. I was wrong on that one.
John O'Corn?
Yeah.
You riding the corn train?
He had such a phenomenal freshman season at Houston. I'm like,
Houston,
be good here, man.
I remember looking at his numbers when he was coming in. Yeah, I do remember thinking that. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought
wrong. Shane Morris was going to be it.
Yep.
Wilton Spate, maybe a little bit. I remember watching him play. I think it was like in the Under Armour game, and he had one of those reflective visors. I'm like, dude's gonna ball out when he gets to Michigan.
I mean, my dad.
All right.
Yeah, my dad's throwing some good ones out there. Desmond, I mean, how many people is Desmond Howard's favorite? I mean, a lot. Lamar Woodley, that's another strong answer. Aiden Hutchinson's certainly going to get some A-Train. A lot of people love Anthony Thomas.
Anthony Thomas, the A-Train, the big shoulder pads, the dark visor. Like, I remember watching that dude run the football. He's up there. There's no question.
Yep, Denard, another A-Train. Mercury Hayes, a little bit of love for Mercury Hayes. Ty Streets was Angelo Anthony, sure. I mean,
David Terrell.
Yeah, Anthony Carter, again, a little before mine and Chris's time, but like that's a legend, man. That's the guy that made the number one. I mean, there's a lot of answers you could throw out there, and you're not going to be wrong. That's interesting development over there, though. That Blake Corum might be at the top of your list. So
yeah, I think he's edged out Bernard ever so slightly, and part of that is team success as well. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, right. And that's so if you had a Mount Rushmore of favorite, and this doesn't necessarily mean best players ever, which you could probably make an argument in some metrics that Blake would be in that discussion too. He's going to probably lead the team in touchdowns all time. That's pretty big.
No
so you'd have Denard, Blake,
dude. Again, I don't know if it's prisoner of the moment, recency bias. No, I was going to go Aiden Hutchinson. I don't see how you put him on there, like who he was and what he did for this program in terms of helping to turn it around. And then, fuck it. Throw Mike Sainer still on. Guy who's always in the right place at the right time, leads the team currently in interceptions, leads the team in pick sixes. He's like number 7 and 10. I mean, this guy, what he's done, how he transitioned to a defense.
Moody mention.
Well, love Jake Moody. A kicker is not going on my Mount Rushmore. There it is. Denard Robinson, Blake Corum, Aiden Hutchinson, Mike Sainer still. Give me those guys.
I've got Chuck, Woodson, Tyrone Wheatley, Denard, and it'd be a battle for that 4th spot because there's a lot of guys out there that I would say are, have some place in my heart, whether it was when I was a kid or like I said,
but this run over the last 3 years, this is a golden age of Michigan football. To me, the idea that not having any of these guys in that list, like, I don't know, this has been absolutely a pleasure to be able to watch over the last few years.
This is a powerful question, I will say, but like I was 7 when he won the Heisman. Like I was watching, but like it doesn't quite grab me the same way as these other guys do.
I was going to say part of that is I wasn't watching him on TV. You know what I mean? So I don't really have that connection. Like, I see the grainy highlights. I know he won a Heisman.
Oh yeah.
I know he's incredible, but it's not a part of my Michigan memories.
Yeah, that's how I feel too. I mean, that was probably like the start of when I would have been paying pretty close attention. I mean, Wheatley was pretty early for me. He was early 90s as well. Yeah. But again, I've always been so into the running back position. And dude, he's just this big back, fast as shit. He wore the number 6, the single digit back before the single digit was a thing, was just cool. How
can Tom Harmon not be on your Mount Rushmore?
Right. I mean, old 98. Yeah. But again, yeah. So no, that's a fun game.
War heroes.
You got something against war heroes. That's a fun game. That's a fun game to try to come up with your Mount Rushmore of favorite Wolverines. How
about that? 3 guys on my Mount Rushmore have played in the last 3 seasons. And you know what? I think you could, it's not, some of it's recency bias, but all of them make a strong case. Like, there's no way you don't want Mike Sainer still on your defense. You want him out there. He is everywhere he needs to be. There's no way you don't want Blake Corum carrying the ball for you. You're not going to advocate against that.
Maybe
Denard Robinson, because he seems to be the most controversial. Like, the thing that pisses me off the most is when people are like, well, he wasn't a true quarterback. Like, get out of here. Like, the dude was a legit quarterback. He could throw the ball. It just so happens that he was so elite with his mobility and his ability to run that you put on your blinders and you're like, running back. Couldn't throw.
I was going to say he's become a little bit of a dink in his post-Michigan career, but
oh boy,
there wasn't a more beloved Wolverine at the time than Braylon Edwards. I know people's opinions of him have changed after, but dude, he was a force, and he just.
I like Braylon. What's wrong with him?
Well, he's had some opinions that people haven't loved. I mean, you and I have actually spent a little bit of time with him personally. He's an awesome dude, but like he goes out there and he says some things that people are like, "Come on, man." But whatever.
Well, who among us hasn't, Brandon?
Well, yeah, amen. I mean, I do it minutely. I was going to say hourly, but it's probably more than that.
Minutely.
I don't think that's a thing, but all right. If anybody else has any other questions, fire them off.
Let me ask you while we're waiting, maybe for a couple other questions to generate. I brought this up before we hopped on the show, but I did see this topic brought up on social media, and I am curious how you feel about this. We know Michigan's got a big game coming up against Alabama. Look, if you're one of those fans who doesn't like to look ahead, cover your ears, get out of the podcast right now, because I'm going to look ahead a little bit. But if Michigan goes out this year and wins a national championship, regardless of who they play in the championship game, if the Wolverines are lifting the national championship trophy, for you, is that enough to move Jim Harbaugh into the discussion of being the greatest head coach at Michigan of all time?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he just did something that's never been done. That's a pretty big feather in the cap. The 3 outright titles in a row. Yeah, there's no question. I mean, Bo never won a natty, and Lloyd Carr's got one that's shared, and before that, you got to go back to like World War II. So I mean, like, yeah, he's gonna be. Yes, absolutely, he's going to be in that discussion. I don't think it's even like a debate.
I just think. Well, you talk about incredible turnarounds.
Yeah.
We were sitting here in 2020 advocating for them to lift this guy, shoot him to the moon, get him out of Ann Arbor. And here we are 2 wins away from pretty much Jim Harbaugh being considered the greatest head football coach in Michigan football history. I just think that is, you talk about incredible turnarounds. And I know that people are going to point to the sign stealing thing to try to detract away from his success. And that's fine. You can do that. But what he's done for this program, if they go out and they win it all, there are so many reasons why that ending only makes sense for this team, for this group of guys, for this coaching staff. Sharon Moore, Jim Harbaugh, Blake Corum, JJ McCarthy. Like, just go down the list. It feels like this team is sort of headed there. Like, it kind of felt like they were on the path toward destiny last year, but we knew Georgia was going to be a problem. And I think even if Michigan had gotten into that game, if they had beat TCU, I'm not so sure they could pull it out against Georgia. This time, this might be the first time in the playoff era that it truly feels like every single team in it can legitimately win it.
Yeah.
Like, you could always point to one team before and be like, they can't really get it done against these other guys. This time, every single team is capable of doing it. Why not Michigan?
I would say I would agree with that. I would say that's a powerful question. That's a big one. That's a big boy question. And I would like to hear someone's argument against it, because I don't know how you could. I don't know how you, and look, like, as we said it, we're not presidents of the Jim Harbaugh fan club. Pretty big fan of him at this point because of what he's done, but it wasn't that long ago where we were both saying, like, enough, man, enough of this. Like, he's had the leash is getting longer and longer and longer, and it shouldn't at this point, but the turnaround has been incredible. Sean Bennett, my apologies. I did not mean to skip over this quarterback question. Chances that there is JJ McCarthy, Alex Orji, Dante Moore, and Jaden Davis all in the QB room next year, I would say low. I would say the odds are low that happens. Very low.
It's also worth noting, it's Orgy with an I.
Yeah.
Orgy with an I. There is
with a J and an I. I think that was intentional.
With a J and an I. Maybe it auto corrected for Sean Bennett there. Sometimes our phones can do that if we're used to typing in words over and over. I was
going to say, how often are you? I'm going to apologize on your behalf to the young lady in your profile pic that you are using the word orgy that frequently.
You know what, Sean? You just outed yourself right there. You got every other word correctly other than orgy. So I'm not saying you're searching it, but
Sean, did you mean orgy?
I agree with Brandon. I think it's extremely, extremely low. But as we talked about before, I think a lot of that's going to depend on how this season plays out. You know, if you end up bringing in a guy like Dante Moore, then I start to wonder where a guy like Alex Orji fits into the equation. Like Dante Moore is not necessarily coming here to sit for a year, particularly when you've got Jaden Davis coming in, and it's not like he's going to want to sit for 3 years. Now I get there's a different culture at Michigan and people buy in, and you're sort of willing to wait your turn. And JJ had to sit for a year. He got a little bit of playing time here and there, but this is part of what Brandon and I were talking about before we hopped on the show. There's only one quarterback position on the field. It's not like wide receiver. It's not like running back where you can shift them in and out all the time. Like to have 3 guys, who all want to get reps and all want to get snaps on the same roster and expect that to last, especially in this era of the transfer portal, I think is highly unlikely. So I think what happens with Dante Moore, what happens with Michigan's season as far as, do they win it all? Is JJ back? Does Dante Moore come? Where does Alex Orji fit in? What's going on with Jaden Davis? I think all of those things are going to play out in a major way here over the next several weeks. But, by the time the season comes to a conclusion, I think we'll have a much clearer picture on that.
Yeah, it is fluid for some reasons that will play themselves out. They've got to play at least one more game, and that that'll determine maybe how JJ's feeling, and then what JJ decides to do might determine whether Dante Moore looks really seriously at Michigan, whether Alex Orji is going to try to stick around and be QB1 next year. Jaden Davis is he's probably like a lock. Like he'll be there, I would think, unless something weird happens. It doesn't seem like nothing, like anything's going on with him, but the other 3, they all kind of hinge on each other. Like there's, so it's hard to guess that right now, I would say. But AJ Cooper, another donation. Appreciate it. This is a good question too. It's always fun to play this game. One guy on offense, one guy on defense. Who are you bringing back from the past to win a national championship this year? Braylon would help a lot. Big threat on the outside. And I am with you. If you could have Jabril Peppers spying Jalen Milroe for the whole evening, that would be very helpful. Very effective and very helpful. I like the Jabril pick. Let me think a minute on offense. Chris, do you have anybody that comes immediately to mind that might be different than those 2 guys? The Jabril pick is awesome because you could do a lot with him when it comes to Jalen Milroe running around.
I mean, selfishly, because I already said it earlier in the show, and I love JJ McCarthy, and I would want him to still serve as QB1. But I think you bring Denard Robinson in on a handful of snaps, and you've got him back there with Blake Corum and possibly, Donovan Edwards out in the slot. You're giving a defense a lot to think about and a lot to consider. I mean, you've got 2 guys on the field who can run it and sling it. Like it's going to create a problem. So I'd love to see Denard come back on offense because I think offensively these guys are pretty good. Like you could go with an offensive lineman like a Taylor Lewan or something like that to sort of shore up what they have up front. But to me, you put a guy like Robinson behind the offensive line that they already have. And then defensively, I agree. I think they're solid across the board. It might be interesting to bring a guy back like Rashawn Gary and see what he's like if he's used properly. But, having somebody like Jabril Peppers sort of roaming around, spying the quarterback, doing what he does, I'd probably lean more Peppers at this point because I like who they have up front. I like the linebackers, like the secondary, but I think Peppers could present a problem. Yeah,
I think that matchup wise, he could put a Band-Aid on a lot of things that might end up hurting Michigan because of how Milroe plays. If you wish maybe there was just a more dominant pass rusher, I mean, I'm with Chris. Like, if you bring back an Aiden Hutchinson or even go back a little further and you bring back a Brandon Graham or a Lamar Woodley, it means you're taking one of those other guys off the field kind of a lot. And I like them all. I mean, I don't want Jalen Harrell not playing. I don't want Braden McGregor not playing. I like those guys. But
do you bring Charles Woodson back and let him play opposite of Will Johnson? And you got Will Johnson and Charles Woodson on the corners locking it up.
Who gets number 2?
That's pretty enticing.
That's a pretty easy answer.
2 and then 2.2.
There you go. Yeah, that's always a fun game to play. On offense, man, I don't know because I'm with Chris. I don't like the idea of taking JJ out for anybody, whether it's, add an element with Denard or, you take actually, I don't even know if there's another quarterback you could discuss in that one, honestly, but running backs, you're not taking either of those guys out of there. Maybe it is a Braylon. You put just a game-changing type of wide receiver out there. If you're in love with Roman Wilson, you put Braylon out there with him, and now it's like that's a problem. that's a problem for some people.
The only reason I didn't go wide receiver is because it's not really Michigan's thing right now. You know what I mean? Like, I think wide receiver is plug and play. Like, yeah, you can get a lot out of Tyler Morris. You can get a lot out of, Roman Wilson. You can get a lot of Samaj Morgan if you put him out. Like, so Michigan's offense really isn't built, for a guy like Braylon Edwards, where it was like in the 2000s where, drop, throw it up in the back corner of the end zone and let him go get it. You never see Michigan do shit like that. They don't even recruit those types of receivers. The last thing you had that was closest to it was like a Nico Collins or a Donovan Peoples-Jones, and we didn't really see much of that. I mean, correct. I'm not going to go back into how underutilized those guys were, but
so you're saying Braylon Edwards joining the team and catching 2 balls for 19 yards, not super valuable?
Doesn't do it for me. No, I'd rather have Denard ripping off, a 60, 70, 80, 90 yard run. And that could happen anytime he touched the ball. He was a major, major problem. And then a lot of people forget towards the end of his career, he just happened to switch over to the running back position because his arm was injured and he was averaging like 100 yards a game. Like he was good there too. So, yeah, give me shoelace. Give me the dreadlocks back in the Jordan Brand gear. Dude, I'm almost done with my Denard rant. But could you imagine what his helmet would have looked like in the award sticker era? Like there wouldn't have been enough room for all of the decals and all the records he was breaking. Like it just would have been loaded.
Yeah, he was one of a kind, man. One of a kind. There's no doubt about it. They slapped him on the front of NCAA. Do I have that right here? I sure as hell do. Right within arm's reach. Look at that. Look how glorious, dude.
Incredible.
Look at that.
Everything about that.
Man, what a time. What a time. Well,
damn it, Blake's name. You're damn near going to get banned for that comment. You're damn near going to, because I just talked about this shit. I just brought it up. Do not tell me the guy couldn't pass. His completion percentage was nearly identical to Chad Henne. Don't tell me he could not pass. Was he the greatest?
He was so good at the other part that you forget.
Correct. That's the thing is he was an elite runner, and because he had that in his bag, a lot of people dismissed what he did through the air. Go back and look at the numbers. They don't lie. Did he throw some bad balls? Yeah, absolutely. Did he have some interceptions? There's no question about it. But this idea that he couldn't pass, that shit just drives me nuts. Like I can go all day on that.
I just saw somebody else mention kind of what you're saying, like Braylon Edwards, incredible, but in this offense might not be the most help. It might be a Jake Long or a Taylor Lewan. Put an absolute animal at left tackle to really try to slow down that physical Alabama pass rush and those big dudes up front. It's a fun game to play. Kind of speaks to how good this team is, though, when you're struggling to take any player in the history of Michigan football to replace a guy on offense, and you're like, well, I don't know. I think I kind of like who they got right now.
Yeah.
That's pretty special. I saw someone else say, maybe bring Jake Butt back. Like, why? I love Jake Butt, but you don't need him.
Yeah. So I'm saying, like, you bring Denard in for a handful of packages here and there and let him run around a little bit, but I don't want to take anybody they have currently off the field. I like who they have. Right. And like you just said, that speaks to how talented this team is. You look offensively and defensively, sure. If you could throw Charles Woodson out there opposite of Will Johnson, would you do it? Absolutely. But Josh Wallace has been pretty damn good. And if you can add an element like a Jabril Peppers in there who's good at spying the quarterback, elite type of athlete, can do pretty much anything on the defensive side of the ball. You get him on special teams as well. So that might be the benefit. Be the benefit. You can utilize him in some different ways. But by and large, there's nobody on either side of the ball that I want to take off the field.
This is a testament. This is a testament to me not knowing a lot about the offensive line. I've just never been a guy who's watched it very closely. Even now that I kind of do it for a living, I just don't really ever focus on the offensive line. Who's the best right tackle to ever play at Michigan? Anybody out there have a name they could throw at me? Because that might be the most valuable thing you could bring to this team right now, given the fact that Zinner went down and now you've got some guys playing out of position a little bit. It's just a thought. Left tackle hasn't exactly been dominant either. They've had move some guys around a little bit over there, but that was just a thought that I had. This team's really good. It's what we've been saying all along. Not much of a weakness. Was John Jansen a right tackle? That'd be pretty damn good. That'd be all right. I thought he was a left tackle, but I could, whatever.
I can't use my one pick on each side of the ball on an offensive lineman. I can't do it when they're so deep at the position there. Like I just feel like you could add some other elements that would really take you over the top offensively.
Or you could just take one of those guys and put them at right tackle.
Like you put a Taylor Lewan on the offensive line, and how much different does Michigan look from what it already looks? Like, are you going to see like a totally different offense?
It might be pretty significant. Those dudes were good, man.
But you're only adding in one. You know what I mean? So
I know.
Getting a new, I don't think adding Taylor Lewan to what they already have, you're going to all of a sudden see like this completely different offense. I just. You put a guy like Denard in there, sure. You add a package in for a guy like Jabril Peppers, you're probably going to see some, but then you got Samaj Morgan. You got guys that can do things like you don't really need Jabril on offense.
Can you give me two? Can you give me Jansen and Jake Long? Can we?
Well, now we're starting.
Now we're talking. Now we're talking. Oh, that's a good question. I can't even remember who threw it up there now, but it was a good one. Was it AJ Cooper? AJ Cooper. There you go. We had a couple really good questions tonight, man. We didn't even take it. We did a lot of super chats. They were just good questions that got us really going, and a lot of people kind of got involved in answering them with us too. So that's cool. If you had a question, we didn't get to it again. I mean, they just come in so fast when we have this many people in here. And again, when we've got people, doing the super chats, we want to address those, and then everybody kind of got involved. So hopefully that was I don't know. That was an acceptable Wednesday night show? I feel like, right?
I'd say so. Yeah, plenty of good talk. The fans led the show. Like we didn't really, pick the topics. Like it just kind of went wherever it went, and I think that's the point of Wednesday.
There you have it. So I guess as of now, we're taking a little break. No show on Friday. No game to get ready for. No, nothing crazy to talk about. Unless we'll always throw the unless out there, but for as of right now, we will be back maybe in a week. I mean, I don't know. Are we thinking maybe like a Monday off too, potentially, or
potentially? Yeah. I mean, we could go back to the one a week until game week, and then get back on schedule. We'll see if anything pops off.
Yeah, that's where we'll leave it. We'll be back Monday, maybe, but for sure Wednesday.
Definitely
Wednesday. So that's where we'll be at. Yeah, what do you got? I don't know, man. Travis, honey, the guys aren't coming on tonight. Going to bed.
Spend time with your family. That's what we'll be doing.
Drink heavy. No,
get drunk. Go to the casino. Hey. I mean, whatever floats your boat, man.
Yeah. Well, we do appreciate that, though. We're glad you guys want to hear us, but we've got all these segments every week, and we can't fulfill any of them right now. So
no games to preview. Nothing there.
It is what it is. But Wednesday for sure, maybe Monday, or maybe three assistant coaches get canned.
Travis is saying he listens to the show with his wife. I mean, I can't think of a better way for a married couple to bond than by sitting back and listening to us talk for an hour.
So does Sean Bennett and his wife, and apparently 6 other couples as they're having their group activity. Good night, everybody.